speakers. Greetings, welcome to the Transforming Assessment series. This is a joint session with the eAssessment Association for the International eAssessment Awards. So we are at the 7th of July. I'm going to hand over to Teresa, if you could please do your introduction. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Good day to everybody, and a big sincere thanks to Transforming Assessment for helping us facilitate this joint session. So I'm Teresa Jacobs, and I'm a member of the eAssessment board. I'm in my second term and had the privilege this year to judge the Transformation Assessment Award. So just a little bit about us at the EAA. We're a very passionate, not-for-profit membership body with three major goals that I think actually align fairly closely with Transforming Assessment. We're here to provide professional support, facilitate debate, discussion for everyone involved in this field of expertise. We like to create and communicate the positive contributions that technology, in its broadest sense, makes to all forms of assessment and education, and to develop statements of good practice for suppliers of consumers of the assessment technologies. We have 2,400 plus individual membership, and we are rapidly increasing, particularly over the last year. So just EAA in a few numbers, just a few numbers in terms of our activity. So the sort of things we do, the tweets, discussion groups, etc. Although we are a not-for-profit organisation, we are indebted to our many sponsors, particularly those who sponsor the eAssessment Awards. So those are our sponsors. So it was a very exciting eAssessments Award this year. Absolutely record numbers of entries, celebrating the diverse and innovative field of e-assessment and the overall impact it has across the globe, opportunity to share best practice in the workplace and in higher education, vocational training, schools, colleges. I think what was most gratifying in this year's eAssessment Awards was how international we have become over the years that we've been since the awards were first launched. So we've had winners from South Africa, from North America, Mexico, South Korea, India, Netherlands, Ireland, the UK, and I'm sure you're justly proud of awards also from Australia that we have a chance to celebrate with you today. So here you will see the overall winners in all the 8 categories from our lifetime contribution to Professor Jeff Masters and the various others, 3 of which you will be hearing from during this webinar. So the presenters for today are the Best Summative Assessment Project, and the winner is Monash University. The Most Innovative Use of Technology, Bolton College, and this, by the way, was in a year when the pandemic forced a lot of innovation. We had absolutely record numbers of entries in this one, so a really proud winner there with Bolton College. And Best Research, again, won by Purdue University with RM. So welcome to the session. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the 3 presentations, and you're welcome to use the chat, or please do raise your hands. So I would like now to hand over, to our first of our speakers, Kris from Monash University. Kris, over to you. Thank you.
Oh, look, thank you very much, Teresa, for your introduction, and thank you to the eAssessment Association for their recognition and for the opportunity to present the Monash journey so far into our foray into eAssessment. Joining you from Australia, where I am, it's traditional to commence with an acknowledgement of the Indigenous cultures in our country. So before I begin, I'd like to commence by acknowledging the people of the Kulin Nations on whose land I'm speaking to you from today, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and I'd like to acknowledge any elders who join us today. A story about eAssessment at Monash University really has to start with a story about Monash itself. It's a very young university. You'll see that it really was established very early in the late 50s, early 60s, with a very small group of students. It's a research-intensive university equivalent to the Russell Group, and it's in the top 1% in rankings globally in terms of its research and its education. And it's big. We have over 77,000 students from more than 170 countries. We have campuses that are based primarily in Australia, but we have other campuses in Malaysia, China, India, and a new one in Indonesia. With this, traditionally we have had over 350,000 paper-based exams, and as part of a transition away from a traditional examination-based assessment approach, we have for some years been looking to move to an eAssessment platform. And I'd like to just talk briefly about the philosophy that has driven that. So our eAssessment philosophy has been to be able to enable us to assess for skill development rather than knowledge acquisition. And with that, you start thinking about, well, authentic assessment and the types of questions you might provide, the opportunity you provide for our academics to ask novel questions. And then to be able to ask those within the specialist software environments that we know our students are going to graduate into using. We know that we have to provide an opportunity for handwriting, and that's in the eAssessment area, been a big challenge, and very much been wanting to transition ourselves away from really staid question types to include other information that can be made available to the students at the time that they're doing their assessment, in particular with audio and video. Our approach has been very much to improve the student experience, and the data that we're getting through here is that the students have been doing better than ever before in terms of their academic output. In conversations with our students and the research with our students, we have found that a lot of that is due to their capacity to better plan for their assessments, moving, formatting, editing their work. And from the academic perspective, it's effectively halved the assessment time, in particular for essay-based assessments, where we have many academics still wanting to do essay-based work. We have co-developed our approach with over 600 students, well over 100 academic staff. We've built our own invigilation environment to support this, and that's allowed us to be able to work across all of our campuses. And the intent has been that we have to have a flexibility to direct our own assessment modality. So that's then aligned with the expectations of our partners in the community. And it is designed to work directly with our education strategy. And the main purpose is to support our students to develop and demonstrate their capabilities. So we've been working on eAssessment for a little while now, certainly before the COVID pandemic. And we started small. We started with the Faculty of Law. We were inspired in particular with the University of Oslo back in 2018. And we have managed to now have all of our different disciplines. We have 10 faculties. Every discipline is using the platform. And the platform looks something like this. built the platform initially from our paper-based exams, at least to start with. The idea being get all of the academics onto this platform so that they could see the commonality with what they were used to, and then change what the platform can do away from traditional paper-based exams. There is clear advice for our students here on what to expect and the materials to bring so that they are calm and ready to go to be able to demonstrate their learning. With the questions themselves, there's some key elements that I'll just take you through that we've added that we haven't seen in other platforms. The first one is for students to be able to articulate that they're unsure on a certain type of question. They can highlight text, they can do note-taking, they can actually alter with one click of a button the format of the page so that the questions are on the left-hand side of the screen and their answers are on the right-hand side. Currently we have 9 key question types, and we have you might be able to just notice a strange sort of blue or grey watermark behind here. That's a QR code. From the academic integrity perspective, we can determine if someone has taken a photo of this screen and then uploaded it where they shouldn't. Look, I've mentioned that handwriting has been crucial for us, and that's certainly one of the key question types that we have available. It's crucial for many disciplines, and we were able to provide for our students the capability to upload to a secure website their handwritten notes. Importantly, they do that with their phone, particularly in that this is the bottom set of images there. The students are able to do that, and on the main platform, they're able to see what they've uploaded. So they get that sense of confidence, and that occurs at the end of the exam. So they're invited to be able to do that work. So that then gives us a secure basis and gives the students the confidence that they have uploaded the right work. Should they need to do handwriting for mind maps or mathematics, etc., they've been able to link that directly to their work. We've been doing other things as well. The most interesting from my perspective, I've got an engineering background, and the key thing that we're now getting on is to undertake assessment within a specialist environment designed to the needs of the discipline. So there's an example down the bottom there of engineering where we're able to use CAD, IT where we've got coding environments as well, and somewhat embarrassingly from my perspective, accounting where we're providing the students the opportunity to have a lockdown version of Excel. That might sound like a really fundamental and basic thing, but when you start thinking about the fact that up until this point, the exams for accounting have asked students to hand draw a ledger, you start thinking about when we've ever asked accountants to last hand draw a ledger, and you start thinking about that in terms of exams. So to be able to transition our academics mindset away from a traditional paper-based exam to all of this capability is a very valuable thing indeed. Another opportunity that we've put for our students is to be able to upload and download files as part of the question. So we wanted to be able to do this in particular for project-based assessment. We see project-based assessment in our IT and engineering for 6, 12 and 24-hour time windows. So the students download, they're able to do the work on their own machine and then re-upload the file that they've got. Now there's academic integrity concerns of course in that, but we work with the academics to design their assessments so that the academic integrity is not as big a concern as we have open book. And the other is flagging and broadcasting of responses. So a student is able just to click a button to say, with one button I can flag that there may be an error in the text of the question. We don't ask the students to write a significant piece of work, instead just that one click to do that. And then when we have a high enough percentage of students clicking to that, it's generally about 2%, we're then able to respond to the entire group when they reach that question. You get a broadcast when you get to that question to say, hey, there's an error here. And we're giving our academics an option either to say, look, ignore the question, or to update the text of the question. Very rarely used, fortunately, given the amount of work of QA that we do with our exams, but very important work nonetheless. I'll briefly move to academic integrity. Our approach has evolved We started with an external vendor that unfortunately didn't meet our expectations. That particular vendor had an 80% success rate in getting students onboarded. There was questions from our students in terms of privacy and security, and importantly in terms of the processes that we expected to be able to have at the university. So we expect a particular situation, a student should be able to get feedback on something not working technically within a couple of minutes. And when we're working with an external vendor, there's more people along the chain to get that to work. So what we did, and what we were asked to do from our academic board, was to write our own invigilation platform. It's built on Big Blue Button. It's been co-built with our students and with our academics. It allows for a significant supervision ratio. That supervision ratio can be dialed up or down depending on the academic integrity requirements of both the student's location and of the assessment itself. There's artificial intelligence that supports that, primarily using the PC camera to see where the students are looking. From that, you're able to, as an invigilator, go backwards and forwards across each of the students, a little flag that sort of highlights there. If you agree that there's been something that's a little awry, you're able to put a flag there as well, and then that information is presented to the chief examiner of the unit so that they can work to make sure the students haven't done the wrong thing. So I wanted to talk about what's next though, because this gives us an opportunity to think about where eAssessment, for us at least, can take us beyond a traditional exam. Back when I started at Monash University, I asked, well, what are the different options as a young academic for question types or new assessment, if you will. And I was informed of the black dots that you see towards the bottom of the slide here, and you could get them to do a fill in the blank or a numerical type question, and that very much didn't inspire me to say that we're actually doing anything which, as I said, presented students an opportunity to demonstrate their skills. What we're doing now with the assessment environment is along that vertical axis. So now we have the video and audio, we have the specialist software environment, and then we start talking also about data manipulation with those file uploads and downloads. Where we're going is to take it the next step further, and that's when you start thinking about peer assessment, teamwork, multi-stage case studies, and links so that students can download their creations into an e-portfolio. And so then you've got the three areas as an assessment cube, if you will, as the paradigm which we work to continue the development of the eAssessment tool. And so we are now working on 5 key additional features on our platform. The first is to be able to provide students immediate expert feedback. So they say the student looks at the question, they attempt the question, they submit that, and then what they see on a side-by-side view has been the expert response to the same question. So they can immediately compare how they went versus an expert. We have blind marking already set through our system. We're working to improve that so that we allow peer assessment as well, and obviously for our students not to know the peer that they are assessing. And again, that's somewhat reliant on the expert feedback. Our students to be able to work together as groups, in particular from an academic integrity perspective, to make sure that they can, we can randomly select those groups together. Be able to provide the opportunity for the students to compare their work against others for a brief window of opportunity before going back, completing their work, and then finally to provide our students the opportunity to create their own assessments, so their own questions, that goes into a database randomizer of questions. And each of these then work as Lego blocks that is then set up by the academic. So if I take the middle example here, the student does an initial attempt, they compare against their work with their colleagues, they continue their attempt for a short time, and then they get the expert feedback. Or perhaps as an academic you might go with the first one, where the students have their initial attempt, they get that side-by-side view of the expert feedback, and then they move through to the peer assessment. and then they mark someone else's work. So look, thank you very much for the opportunity just to briefly outline the work that we're doing. I've put a link to the side where people can have a look at the information we're providing our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that inspiring and insightful overview of what you've been doing at Monash. I'd now like to hand over the floor to the winner of the most innovative use of technology in assessment. So over to Aftab at Bolton College, please.
Hi everyone, thank you for the opportunity to present FirstPass at Bolton College today, and thank you for the eAssessment Association for giving us the opportunity to showcase our work on the FirstPass service. FirstPass is developed by Bolton College. We're a small FE college in the northwest of England, just to the north of Manchester. We have approximately 2,500 full-time students between 16 and 18 years of age, and we have about 9,000 part-time adult students that we support across our local community. And we're also part of the local University of Bolton group. Regardless of our size, we have a national reputation in the UK for our work on the use of AI to support education services, especially around our work on ADA, which is our campus digital assistant for students, teachers and campus support teams. And ADA has been supporting everyone at the campus since April 2017. We're also quite proud of our recent work with JISC, which is a national EdTech advocacy body in the UK. And we're hoping to offer ADA to the wider further education sector, to the tertiary education sector in the UK. So hopefully that will be a major milestone and a success story for the college and for JISC and for the FE sector when ADA rolls out to other students and teachers across the UK. Our main purpose is that could we make ADA available to every teacher and every student across the UK as a campus digital assistant. So FirstPass stemmed from the work that we did on ADA. So what is FirstPass? So FirstPass is a platform that is being developed by the college to support the formative assessment of open-ended questions. FirstPass grew from the work of ADA, our campus digital assistant. We're generously supported by the UFI VocTech Trust, which is a not-for-profit charitable organisation in the UK, which supports the private sector and FE colleges and the like with the development of EdTech services. And we've also got support from IBM Research in the UK, and they're supporting us with some of the more difficult challenges and problems that we have with the FirstPass and our ability to support students and teachers with the formative assessment of open-ended question, typically around labeling of sentences. When students write on the screen, a sentence or a paragraph could have multiple connotations, and we want to the support of IBM to actually help us with labeling up multiple meanings to potential sentences and paragraphs. And also they're helping us with theme extraction and context analysis in the long run as well. One of the most important things that we want to say is that the teacher offers a final review and commentary on the service. So for teachers, natural language classifications service are well placed to support teachers with the analysis of free-form text. So for many decades, since the early 1920s in the US, teaching machines have been developed to pose questions to the students. But typically those questions are being closed questions, like yes/no questions, multiple choice questions, and over the years, the drag and drop type activities have been developed to support formative assessment online. But it's been remarkably difficult to present an open-ended question to students online and have that have the answer and that process mediated by a computer. So this is a challenge that's addressed by and faced by organisations across the entire globe. Every teacher uses open-ended questions in his or her classroom, but hasn't got the right tool set online to present open-ended questions to his or her students. And for the first time, we have potentially a platform that allows a computer to mediate that entire process. But one of the things that we're saying is that the FirstPass service does not mark. Our focus is on offering real-time feedback for the teacher to the student on the screen. We want FirstPass to be used as a formative assessment tool. We want FirstPass to be used as a learning tool, and we want students to use FirstPass and the teachers to use First in that particular manner. So we're trying not to use the word mark in any of our presentations and any of the documentation that we have on FirstPass. The focus is very much on learning and on formative assessment, and we see formative assessment critically as a learning instrument that teachers and students use on a day-by-day basis. So for learners, we think that the real-time feedback is an important mechanism. We want students value real-time feedback. However, when they're online, it's hard for a teacher to offer real-time feedback synchronously across all of the students that use the platform at any one point. So FirstPass allows us to do that. So as a student is writing and composing an answer on the screen, there's a panel on the right-hand side of the screen which offers students general advice and guidance about their work, what kind of things they're missing out on, what things they need to write a little bit more about, and so on and so forth. And we want the students to ask important questions. For instance, am I on the right track? I'm not sure if this is right. I've no idea what my teacher is after. And basically, the real-time feedback on the screen will allow the student to seek out answers to those important questions on the screen. Now, we think that feedback is crucial to the whole premise of developing FirstPass. And we want students to develop a greater degree of autonomy and confidence when they're writing answers to these open-ended questions. So students can make mistakes, they can make corrections, they can save the work and reflect on the work and go back to the work and improve upon it. And we want students to ask themselves important questions that allow them to work in a more autonomous fashion. I want them to say, what have I missed? What do I need to write more about? Have I answered the question fully? Is there any way that I could improve the answer that I've written against that question? So we see this very much around learning and not around marking. So by the time the student presents the work back to the teacher, we hope that the actual quality of the work is of a higher standard, and there's less toing and froing between the student and the teacher when it comes to the feedback process. So we want to be able to use FirstPass to allow the student to demonstrate their knowledge and understanding about a subject topic. And we want to use FirstPass to allow the students to develop their writing skills. We want students to be able to be in a position to analyze and appraise or critique the work that they're doing, and to examine the main key themes or topics that they're addressing when they're answering an open-ended question. So we want to encourage that development work in our students, and we think that teachers would and students would welcome the introduction of FirstPass to support the formative assessment of open-ended questions. In terms of our roadmap, FirstPass is still in development. We've got a long way to go yet. We're hoping to go live in September 2021, but we have with a minimal viable product. But we're hoping that FirstPass will continue to be nurtured and developed over the coming years. So one of the things that we want to do is can we refine the textual and graphical feedback that we're giving to our students? Can we provide audio feedback to the students? So can we enable the teacher to say, I want to give audio feedback back to the student against there's a submission? And we want the feedback mechanism to support teachers further. So for instance, can a computer analyze everything that's been said by the student against their answer? And can a computer generate a script on the fly that allows it to present a summary of the feedback process back to the student? So hopefully that will alleviate and take some of the burden and feedback time away from the teacher as well. We want to make use of spelling and grammar and punctuation checkers. We want the students to have the ability to go through that process and check the work in that way. Teachers will be able to switch that service on or off. So sometimes a teacher will say, I want the students to demonstrate that they can write in a competent fashion without spelling mistakes or grammar mistakes or what have you. And the teacher may choose to switch that on or off during the course of the work. And we want the computer to, on FirstPass, to be able to extract the theme from a body of work. So if a student is writing at length of many pages in length with thousands of words in length, can the actual FirstPass service examine the development of themes across the student work? Like for instance, has a theme or the context been developed in the answer? How does that change from paragraph to paragraph? Is paragraph 1 is paragraph 2 referring back to paragraph 1? Is paragraph 3 building on the argument that's been presented in paragraphs 1 and 2? So that's where the service will actually develop in the long run as well. We want to the service to be able to train on documents and websites. So at the present moment in time, a teacher has to go to the FirstPass website and manually label up sentences against a typical subject topic classifier. But ideally, we want FirstPass to scrape the data across multiple documents and websites. So teachers have learning management systems, virtual learning environments. They have large libraries of documents against subject topics. And we're wondering if we could actually harness that library to inform the knowledge base of FirstPass. We want to introduce a plagiarism checker as well and use it for comparative judgment. And we want to integrate FirstPass into traditional platforms like an LMS or into an online tutorial. And we're also asking ourselves whether or not FirstPass could support students and teachers with verbal answers or student presentations. So for instance, a teacher could pose a question to a student. A student sits at a computer screen or a tablet or a mobile phone and has a real-time conversation with a digital human or an avatar on the screen. And that conversation takes a student through a formative assessment process. A student could be standing in front of the class, giving a presentation to the student body about a subject topic. Can FirstPass support the student and the teacher to assess that verbal presentation to the student body in real time as well? So these are the things that we can do with FirstPass going forward. So finally, I just want to say that we're going to go live at the college in September 21. But we want to make the service available to a wider community of users thereafter. So if you're interested in learning more about FirstPass, or if you're an institution that wants to take advantage of FirstPass and pilot it in 2021-22, we would love to hear from you. FirstPass improves its ability to support students if we have, let's say, health and social care or nursing teachers in the UK, in Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, France, Germany, Italy, where it is, and they're using it to support a question like, why does high blood, what are the reasons why patients develop high blood pressure, and what can be done to mitigate against high blood pressure? We could have teachers in the UK, Australia, or elsewhere around the world training up a classifier to support that open-ended question. And we could have tens or dozens or hundreds of teachers around the world training up that particular classifier. And then we could have many thousands of students in the UK or Australia or New Zealand or elsewhere answering that question against why patients have high blood pressure and what patients can do to mitigate against it. And as the volume of data rises, FirstPass becomes more informed or better positioned to support the students with that particular subject topic open-ended question. So the idea is that if the FirstPass supports a formative, if FirstPass supports a participative and collaborative approach, where it uses crowdsourced data from teachers and students across the world, then potentially we have quite an interesting platform that could support students and teachers with the formative assessment of open-ended questions. And this, I think this is quite unique for a platform within the education sector, where it's using using a participatory and collaborative approach to nurture and develop the solution that supports formative assessment for students and teachers. So that's a unique element of it. So we need your help to scale it up, and we need your help to make FirstPass more robust when supporting students and teachers. So if you want to learn more, my email address is on the screen. And also as well, we've created a short video on FirstPass, and I'll share that in the conversation panel on the right hand side. So there's a link to FirstPass, and it gives a short overview about how FirstPass operates as well. So that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very, very much for that really insightful presentation there. Highly commendable, very innovative, and very exciting roadmap. So I hope others will get involved. I'd now like to hand over to our final presenter, the winner of the Best Research Award, and that's Purdue University and RM. Over to you, Peter.
Super, thank you, Teresa, and good morning, good evening, good afternoon to all of you joining us. It's a real pleasure to be able to speak to you today. Though I should declare, I'm suffering from a fairly large case of imposter syndrome today. The reason for that is that the body of research to talk to you today, I was involved in, but was led by some of my colleagues. I really hope I do them justice. They did want to be here today, but availability and time zones unfortunately conspired against us. So please bear with me, and as I say, I hope I do my colleagues justice as I go through this next sort of 15-20 minutes or so. Yes, I work for RM. Just to explain that, there was a couple of questions in chat about who on earth RM are. It's a good question. We're a UK-based assessment technology company. We provide eAssessment, a range of eAssessment tools, primarily to awarding organisations and certification bodies around the globe. We're very proud to work with the likes of SEAB in Singapore, New Zealand Qualifications Authority, some school state examination boards in Australia, as well as clients across Europe, America, and the rest of the Asia Pacific. On behalf of our clients, we process around about sort of 20 to 30 million assessments every year, ranging from traditional paper-based exams through to sort of highly innovative simulation, role-play-based digital assessments and invigilation, proctoring, etc. So I hope that gives you a bit of a flavour of RM. I will explain our role in this research as we get through the detail a little bit later on, but I hope that's a helpful context. So I'm going to talk to you about a few things today. We're going to cover the challenge and the hypothesis that we worked on with Purdue University. I'm going to outline the approach that they took to testing their hypothesis. I'm going to talk about the outcome, the impact that they saw on their students, and a little bit about where we as a team go from here. So to start with the challenge then, and this really was driven by Purdue University, one of our co-collaborators on this, and they've been thinking, like a lot of you I'm sure are, and indeed Aftab and Kris have both spoken about this in their presentations, but what is the role of formative assessment in the student experience and the student journey, and what role does formative assessment have in producing good quality outcomes for the student, however they may define good quality in that sense. And Purdue started with, I guess, really what is one of the more grand sort of challenges around formative assessment, which is how to facilitate impactful formative assessment, because obviously it has to be impactful, there's no point doing it, that is scalable. So Purdue University is a very large university, so doing something that doesn't scale isn't particularly appealing to them. But actually they started to cast their net far more wide. So, well, you know, why when we think scalability, do we just think scalable within our own institution? Why not think from the beginning about scaling something nationally and even internationally? Aftab touched on this in his closing comments, just about the value and power you can get from national and international collaborations when you compile data, and I entirely agree with his view on that. So thinking very grandly about scalability, and of course the sort of the killer requirement that comes in at the end, which is that teachers and educators, lecturers are not, they haven't got time spare. You know, they're some of the most sort of hardworking and overworked people we have, certainly in the UK, and I'm sure it's true around the world. So something that doesn't add to the teacher's workload is a killer requirement at the end. These obviously are very large things to be mulling over and large things to be thinking about, and there's any number of ways that this challenge can be addressed. And so Purdue had to sort of boil that down into something that was a bit more actionable to sort of try and test some of this. And what they settled on was something quite specific, which is they wanted to see how they could empower their students to do some independent learning, to really understand what good quality work looks like, so that they can improve their own learning outcomes. And the reason they settled on this as being sort of a subset of that bigger challenge that they were trying to understand was that they realized all too often, certainly in their context and in many contexts, many programs of study, students only see what good quality work looks like towards the end of a period of instruction. Typically, they might do a mock exam, and after the mock exam, they might get told what the right answers were or what good quality answers were. And Purdue's hypothesis was, well, you know, what if we flipped that on its head? What if we completely changed that around and provided that kind of intervention at the start of a new module of learning? What might that look like, and what impact might that have on the student's ability to perform well in that new topic of learning? So that's fundamentally what they did. The specific approach to this was, because of the ambition of the challenge, it required a bit of a partnership. So there were three key institutions involved in this project. So I've mentioned Purdue University a couple of times. They were the lead researcher. Professor Scott Bartholomew led the team there, along with his colleague, Dr. Nathan Menster. We also involved the work of Brigham Young University, and from RM, where I work, a product called RM Compare. I'll tell you a little bit more about RM Compare later on as we get through. And we agreed to collaborate on this and say, well, okay, well, let's work out a methodology for this to test this hypothesis and see what the outcomes are. Professor Scott Bartholomew, lead researcher, is an engineering lecturer by trade. So we started with his cohort. He's very fortunate to have a reasonably large cohort of engineering graduates that we could work with. And the methodology he followed is as shown on screen here. He took his class, he split it into two groups. The control group taught as normal, so in that sense we had a genuine control group trial here, which is quite rare in education, but certainly highly valuable to get that genuine comparison. The group that was in the RM Compare group, they were exposed to just a single 20-minute learning intervention at the start of a new topic of learning. And that intervention focused on showing that group work from a previous year's cohort. So same module, same topic, last year's work, let's show it to this year's pupils. And that intervention was student-led, with minimal or no support or instruction from the teaching staff at all. All the university had to do was to upload the work they wanted the students to see into the RM Compare platform, and that was their involvement done. Everything else was student-led from there. So in order to do that, the reason they chose RM Compare is that Purdue wanted a very simple bit of technology that allowed students to think critically and to assess work. They didn't want to expose them to a full rubric or a mark scheme, or didn't want them to be marking exams like an examiner would do. This is all about them just understanding what good looked like. They wanted a more simplistic tool and a different approach. And that's why they chose RM Compare. So RM Compare leverages the law of comparative judgment. Actually, this has been referenced a couple of times on this talk today already. The reason comparative judgment is so powerful is that humans are naturally very good at doing it. It becomes very easy to us to look at two pieces of work and simply decide which one we think is better. And it really encourages us to think critically. And we can be given a very holistic, very simplistic piece of assessment criteria, and they did in this case. If you delve into the research, you can see that. I've got links to that later on. But it very simplistically allowed students to develop a nose for what good looks like. They saw all sorts of pieces of work. Some were good quality, some were of less good quality. And they spent time working on their own, putting that into order, deciding which ones they felt were best. And actually, as an interesting aside, it's not in my slides here, but it is in the research. The level of correlation between the students' assessment of which pieces of work were of good quality versus the academics' view of which pieces of work were of a high quality was very high indeed, that the two were almost exactly the same. So with limited instruction, students are very well able to decide which pieces of work they think are of a high quality, even if they haven't actually undertaken that piece of learning yet. So that was an interesting side outcome of this research, one that we'll probably explore a little bit more as we go forward, but people are very good at doing this. The other reason they chose comparative judgment, in particular they chose the RM Compare platform, is that our platform allows them to capture a really rich source of qualitative insight and ideation for new learning topics. So doing this early on means that students can really develop those ideas of things they want to work into their own work before they undertake their new learning. Does that quite uniquely. So the student experience, just very briefly, as I said, I mentioned they wanted a very simplistic tool. This is RM Compare. It does exactly what you need it to do. It presents you with two pieces of work side by side, allows you to compare them, and you simply choose which of these two pieces of work you think is better, piece of work A or piece of work B. It's as simplistic as that, and simplistic by design. That's the beauty of it. And in doing that and in making their decisions, as I mentioned, the students are able to say why they chose script A over script B. So the academic side of this research project, we're able to get a lot of qualitative data about the students' thought process. What attributes were they recognizing as being good quality or of less good quality indeed? Was that recognition good? Were they genuinely good quality attributes of high quality work? So the academics were able to sort of effectively monitor this platform, although, as I said, actually they found they didn't really need to. Students were already very well versed at finding good quality work, even prior to the tuition happening. So what happened? So they did that, as I mentioned, it was a single 20-minute intervention at the start of a new topic of learning. What was the outcome? Well, as I mentioned, RM Compare really allows students to develop a nose for what good quality looks like. And through some of the analytics that we provide, the academics were able to identify any students. So all of these blobs here are students on this graph. They were able to spot, are there any students that perhaps haven't yet developed that nose for what good quality looks like? Are there any that perhaps are in this blue bar at the top here that perhaps don't agree with the majority, haven't yet really understood what good quality work looks like, and therefore you might want to do some targeted learning support around that. So that was step one, really making sure that the students know what good looks like. And then the rest of the instruction took care of itself. And at the end of that topic of learning, all of the students from both the control group and the RM Compare group were assessed. They were all assessed in exactly the same way. And what was fantastic was that the RM Compare group performed statistically significantly better than the control group, and they did it across all ability ranges, which again is quite unique in educational interventions. So normally you find just the less able pupils catch up, or the better able pupils grow even further and improve even more. But those that are in the middle sort of stay static often, those sort of coasting students. This didn't happen here. This was a genuine improvement in outcomes across all ability ranges, which is fantastic. So where do we go from here? I'm about to wrap up now because there's lots of questions in the chat, which I know we'll want to get to. really pleased to say that off the back of the research that Professor Bartholomew published, the Purdue University have now received a multi-million-dollar grant from the National Science Foundation in the US to roll out this exact same study to a county school district in Atlanta, Georgia, the DeKalb County District. So we're going to be working with a group of their schools from autumn 21 onwards. It's a 3-year project. Fundamentally, we'll be exploring if this exact same methodology can be used in a high school setting. So this will be focused around grade 9 students. So huge potential for students and teachers to engage as we go forward. So some really exciting projects happening from autumn 21 onwards. For more information, you've got the links here. You should get a copy of these slides. So I'll put the links here in plain text, so you'll be able to get hold of those. If you want to read the actual research article itself that I've talked about today, the link is there. There is also a sort of short video overview of this research project. It covers much of what I'm talking about here. If you want to get your hands on RM Compare, you're very welcome to. We'd love to work with you. You can have a free trial. We're also signing up early adopters for RM Compare, who will have the entire product for free for the next 9 months. So if you want to explore that, there's a free trial link on there, or you can just drop me an email. Would happily work with you and would love to hear from you. My email is on the screen. That's it from me. Thank you ever so much. I hope I did my colleagues justice, and I think I have to Teresa for the panel questions.
Thank you very much for that. There's obviously huge potential and impact with that technology. So thank you very, very much there. And before we hand over for questions, I'd like to welcome everybody and anybody to join the eAssessment Association today. Individual membership is free, and you can access it via the www.eassessment.com. So next, the questions to the panel. And a big thank you, first of all, to our session deliverers. Thank you to Kris from Monash. Thank you to Jonathan Hart, although not with us, and to Aftab for the presentation. And thank you, Pete Collison, on behalf of Purdue University with RM. Questions. If you'd like to use the chat text, or perhaps more conveniently, raise your hand. But if you like, while you're gathering your thoughts and your questions, I've got one particular question for all of the panelists, if I may. We've all three of your presentations have really showcased innovation in assessment or in learning in one shape or form. And yet across the globe, there's still a lot of chalk and talk, a lot of pen and paper, and a lot of exams going on in wobbly, drafty exam rooms. We could say that COVID has kicked in a bit of change and a bit of adaptation in the teaching and learning environment. But I'd like to ask all three panelists, where do you think we will go from now, and what maybe are the barriers?
Perhaps I might start.
Want to kick that one off?
I might start as an answer. It's Kris here from Monash University. In some ways, the question is how do you make it stick? And for the academics that I've been working with, there's just a few things that they really need. The first is a confidence that the institution is going to maintain that piece of technology. If they feel that, I think my colleagues were talking about just how busy our teachers are. If you feel that you're going to be moving from one piece of technology to the next, to the next, to the next, it doesn't work. So having everyone from the senior leadership of an institution all the way down to those working with the academics to say, no, we're keeping with this for several years as a minimum is absolute. The second is to make sure that there's a key principle of the benefits that you anticipate for your students. That is the skill development in my case, and I think in the cases that we've seen here also, in the students to be able to demonstrate for themselves how they can learn. That is absolute. And the third piece is to make sure that the technology is easy to use and fit for purpose. You get those three things right, then at least the experience that I have here, our colleagues are saying, okay, we're going to stick with it. And the first time we run with this, we really want to use that as an exemplar that we can continue to use that piece of technology going forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's Peter from RM here, Teresa. I'd certainly echo all of it that Kris has said there. We work with an awful lot of awarding bodies of various shapes and sizes around the world. And one thing that Kris said in his presentation, which I'd call out and certainly recognise, is the desire for assessment to be authentic. And increasingly, I think there's a strong argument to say that pen and paper exams are increasingly less authentic, given the context of the digital world that our students immerse themselves in. And the example Kris gave was sort of accountancy exams, and absolutely echo that. We've worked with a number of UK accountancy bodies on exactly that. So I think as you say, there's a long way to go, but ultimately, if we focus on what is an authentic assessment experience as our sort of North Star, our guiding principle, then I think that's a good place to start in terms of how the system needs to change.
Thank you. Thank you.
And from ourselves at Bolton, we think that AI will play a greater role and prominence in the future of e-assessment, but also I'm mindful about the gap that we still have around digital inclusion and inclusivity about access to hardware and network services. So we're a small college in the northwest of England, and we had problems over the last pandemic year in providing kit to our students and our teachers. And we're not alone in the UK on that one, but also we're not alone across the globe in providing our students and teachers with appropriate and reliable devices to connect up to online services. So that's one of my caveats when talking about the development of these services.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, if I may.
There's more questions in the chat. Sorry, Teresa, I just want to say that I've been collecting all the questions during the session, and I've now started pasting them in as well into the text chat. So the first two questions are there for Kris, and then once Kris has gone through those few questions that are addressed to him, I will paste in the next lot for Aftab. Thanks.
So this is the question for Kris from Tim Hunt, saying that a lot of this is built on top of Moodle, which is open source. Are you planning to share any of your improvements with the community?
So I guess there's two. I see a few questions there for me, so I'll try and sum them up really quickly. So on that one, Tim, yes, a lot of this is built on top of Moodle, and we are looking to see how we can share that with open source. As you can imagine, the most significant investment has been in the change management for our academics and how you actually conduct your assessments appropriately as a university so that things simply don't go wrong. And so we are constantly evolving our platform to suit our needs and the needs of our partners. We are probably, I would say, about 6 months away from being able to do exactly what you've said and provide that information more broadly. I think there's a couple of academic integrity questions there, one from Paul and one that Matthew, you've put down as well. So the first one, Matthew, that you've cut and pasted from Casey, the e-invigilation is conducted in real time, but the invigilator is able to swap from student to student and go back and have a look at and rewind a little bit and see what it was that the AI support might have picked up as the student doing something slightly wrong. And Paul, you asked about the QR code watermark that I presented. It links back to the student and the assessment task. Now, with that one, yes, you could change the contrast. The student could change the contrast in order to be able to avoid being tagged. We have other, we've got other image pieces as well, which beyond the QR code allow us, again, a different approach to be able to identify the student. And I'm being a bit coy with exactly what that looks like, but the contrast is impossible to get away from in that particular case.
Thank you. I don't think we have any more questions.
Yes, there are more. You need to scroll down text chat. And I'm about to paste a bunch for Aftab as well.
Right.
Where we go. Okay, here comes the questions for Aftab. So just, oops, sorry. All right, it's a little bit untidy because I've just banged them all in one big thing. So Aftab, hopefully you can see there's a series of questions for you.
Yeah. So do teachers develop all the feedback comments that FirstPass will present to the students? Yes and no. Teachers can code hard code responses to given responses by the students, but also we're using natural language generation to support the teachers with the feedback process. So the computer looks at the data set against the student when he or she is composing an answer, and then the computer automatically composes feedback to the student to say whether written enough or where there's a shortfall in the actual response given by the student. So the computer does a lot of the legwork on behalf of the teacher, and hopefully that will minimize some of the workload for the teachers as well going forward. David, you said, how does FirstPass work? Basically, it uses a technology or a platform called natural language classification. So, for instance, in the example that I gave earlier on about a teacher asking the students why people have high blood pressure, you could say they don't exercise, they have a bad lifestyle, and they have a high stress job, or it could be other mitigating factors. Teachers could teach FirstPass a whole bunch of sentences that could be potential answers to that open-ended question and label them up accordingly. So there is quite a large task that teachers have in manually labeling up sentences that the classifiers could use. But with the use of document libraries and website crawlers, we're hoping that we could use that method to improve and increase the training time period as well for FirstPass, and hopefully that will support everyone in the long run. But if you want to learn more, please reach out to us. Elaine, you said, ask who trains the AI engine in FirstPass. Teachers do, primarily the subject specialists teach FirstPass. The ideal is that you could have a question about high blood pressure, but you could quite easily have teachers in London, Manchester, Melbourne, Sydney, Auckland, New York, or LA, all teaching that FirstPass about that topic. And the idea is that if multiple teachers in the hundreds of thousands around the world teach the classifiers about a given subject topic, a given teacher only has to spend a few minutes at a time to actually teach the classifiers. So if it works at a scale, the amount of time that any given teacher needs to train any given model is quite small, especially if a large number of teachers contribute towards the actual models. But also when the students respond to the questions, their responses in turn could be fed into the classification models and inform the models themselves. So if you've got hundreds of thousands or millions of students answering a question about high blood pressure, all of the responses could potentially be used to train the model even further. And you said there's still only about 40% satisfaction with the answers for the bots. We've discovered that with the FirstPass service, the service works with quite a high degree of reliability. And even though FirstPass hasn't seen a given sentence from a student before, it has proven time and time again that it can label up unseen sentences that it has never seen before in the past. Denise, you asked about the investment so far. The investment's been in time mainly. We've secured funding from the Year 5 Octech Trust, but the work to develop FirstPass has taken us about the last 2 or 3 years, and we're still in the development phase for FirstPass, but we're hoping to develop a minimal viable product in September and go live with that. So the investment has been substantial by the college, and we're still investing in the service going forward. But the idea is that hopefully the income that we generate from the service will be self-sustaining, and we also want to develop it as almost like a social enterprise. We want to offer the service at a low cost to institutions so that more and more people could use the platform. Janet, you asked about how can we show that the answers are accurate if there's many contributors training the models up. There's a number of things that we could do to address that problem. We could have a moderation group for any given topic or any given subject area. So for instance, a group of nurses or health practitioners could moderate the health classifiers. Or an easier way would be to have FirstPass analyze all the labels that teachers are picking for given sentences, and FirstPass moderates that process and only selects the labels where the majority of teachers have identified for any given sentence. So if the vast majority of teachers pick a given label for a sentence, FirstPass uses that one to inform the behaviour of the model. And we think the latter will probably work better, but it's quite nice to have a group of professionals and subject specialists to moderate and do a health check on the classifiers, just to make sure that the classifiers are working well and working reliably as well. I think that's it, Matthew, for myself.
Thank you. Do we have time for a couple of questions from David Nichol
Yes, indeed.
Regarding RM? So David Nichol is asking, what is the theoretical approach, and have you gone beyond similar entity comparisons to explore analytical and multiple?
Yeah, thanks, Teresa. I've just put a response to David to one of those questions because I knew we were mindful of time. In terms of the theoretical approach, I absolutely would not do my colleagues justice if I tried to explain that. I'm not an academic by trade. So if I could very politely and respectfully point David to the research paper linked from my slides, that would be the best place to go for that. And indeed, I'm sure Professor Bartholomew would be more than happy to be contacted to take questions. His details are all on there, and he is contactable. So please make use of that. In terms of other materials, it's a really good point. I did see David's point on it. Right now, we're working with around about 50 or 60 educational institutions around the world, all of whom are using RM Compare in slightly different ways. We have primary schools, secondary schools, high schools, universities, and others. Most of them are using it in the context of this sort of peer assessment, comparing either previous cohorts' work or indeed within one single class, maybe just I guess the digital equivalent of sharing your paper with your neighbour, just as part of a learning exercise and a learning task. That's quite common and goes down quite well. I'll be honest, we haven't seen, at least not that I'm aware of, any significant use yet in comparing to other sources. I think David mentioned things like research papers and other bits of collateral that can inform your understanding of good quality work. Haven't seen that up until now. There's no technical reason why it wouldn't happen. Indeed, RM Compare can ingest videos, audio clips, PDFs, scans of work, digital documents, even entire websites that you can compare side by side. And you can mix all of that media, so you can very happily compare a document with a video, with a PowerPoint, etc., etc. So no reason why not, but I don't think we're seeing it just yet. Would love to explore it more. If David's got an idea, very keen to work with him.
Thank you. Thank you. Just seeing if we have any more questions that we could answer You know
Yeah,
the time remaining?
Aftab actually just asked, a question from Casey to Aftab. Does FirstPass support auto grading for open-ended question? I assume that means put a mark on it vis-a-vis just formative comments.
It has a potential to do so, but we decided not to. We don't want to use FirstPass as a summative assessment tool, and we want ultimately the teacher to assign a grade to the student work. But the potential is there, but for ethical reasons, at this present moment in time, we've decided not to do that.
Interesting.
Okay, thank you very much, folks. We are almost 15 minutes over time. I think we probably do need to end it here. So just quickly, if you're interested, we've got a session coming up on the 1st of August for object-based learning for digital assessment. And if you could also please fill in our feedback survey, although it'll be slightly a bit crazy because we had 3 presenters rather than 1. But, you know, just do your best. So thank you very much to all the presenters. We really appreciate it. We understand that sometimes the time zones are not particularly comfortable for everybody. So Kris, Ryan, thank you very much from Monash. Aftab from Bolton College, thank you very much. And Pete from RM, very much appreciate your presentations and your input. And Teresa, many thanks for chairing the session. So thank you very much, everybody. And hopefully we'll see you all in about a month's time for the next session. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.